in this tutorial I wanted to go over two components to do RESTful API calls. One of which is very bad to use and the other one is better to use, and I'll go over the differences with each. So the first one is this REST API component. This one is bad because it's very difficult to process the response from this component. It doesn't lend itself to doing that, and as a result things can fail silently and you won't really know until you have customers complaining. This other one, TREST client, this is much better to use. It has many more options and it allows you to log the responses from the API call so you can see it in the logs. And what I want to do is create this job such that it calls this website, which it'll call this dummy URL and use this information, and it'll do a get, and then it'll respond it'll send back some data similar to this, and then I can parse the JSON as well and put those into rows and columns, and you can see it propagate. So let's get started. Actually, I'll just leave that like that so you can see it. And what I'll do, my cat is playing with a string on my dresser. It's distracting me. I'm just going to say on subjob OK. It's going to call this component, so I'll just call the rest of the stuff. On second thought, maybe I will just delete most of this. Yeah, we'll just do this. So for the URL, what we want it to do is just put in the base URL of the site that we're going to hit, and you have to make sure that's in double quotes so that it becomes a string object in Java. And then the relative path that we want to hit with this example is going to be /post/1. And the method we're going to do is going to be a get, and you want to accept any type of argument to this. We're not going to send any arguments, but this lends itself to be the most successful. So we don't have any queries to send to here, and we do not want it to die on error. We want to log the messages, and we don't have any headers to send either. Well, I think we are actually sending one argument, which is 1, but I don't believe that we can just leave that in the URL and see what happens. And because this logs out the messages anyway, this should only call this one time. And let's see what happens when I just run it just by itself. It's going to build the job, create a executable for us, and then execute that. Okay, we got an error. Alright, cool. SSL exception, invoking it's not a compile time error. It may require us to put some input into there. So I'm just going to hit Control Z and make some of my components come back. And I'll modify this a little bit. And we'll limit this to 10. And then instead of subjob OK, we'll just propagate this to there. and we'll put it back in the base URL. And the relative URL we're going to call, which is going to be /posts, like we did before. And we're not going to send any arguments, we're actually going to just put that in the URL. And it's going to be a get, and we're going to accept any type. And then we're going to go and log messages. And that looks good. That should work. There's our response schema. I'm going to save the job. I'm going to comment out this one. Save it again. Let's go ahead and run the job, see what happens. So it did one row and then it had another error. SSL exception. Let's look and see what that means to us. Maybe just HTTP. Works that time. Interesting. Now I told it to log the messages, but it didn't appear to do that. So it looks like it didn't invoke that API call. But we can log out the response. Oops. And we can also log out the error. And then what is this warning about? The schema for the input is different than the schema defined for the component. So I might be having trouble with that. But we're not specifying any type of argument here, so it should be fine. Let's see what our output is for this API call we're doing. So it looks like we had 10 successful responses. And let's look at the response. So the response is so big that I can't even see it properly here. Looks like it was all successful. There's a response code, and then here's the text sent back to us. So it looks like it's was successful. Now moving forward with this, if this was something like a post and we had to process the error response, and what we could do is use a tmap component, and whoops, we can get the error, and then based on the error code, what we can do is create custom responses to that error. So if the error code is 200 no, I'm sorry. If the error code is like a 300 response, which isn't really an error, it's more of like your cache is not being validated or is fine and doesn't need to be invalidated anymore. So, but anyway, we'll do error code 300, and then we'll do error code 400, and then we'll do error code 500, and we'll add some conditions to this where we'll just say row2 dot error code, and we'll take the string value of it because I believe it's a integer, so I'll just do string.value of because that's handy, and I'll do starts there should be something for a string that says start with, and I can go back to my browser and just look that up real quick. Starts with string Java start with method. So that's what we want. So that is a function. So the autocomplete didn't help us out there. Starts with, and then if it starts with a 3, we know it's going to be a 300 response. And I'll copy this and add it to the rest of them. And this one's going to start with a 4, and then this one's going to start with a 5. And then we can copy these things by just clicking and dragging them over. Oops. So we can separate these out, and then what I like to do is make one more general error log in case the error is not any of those. And what you can do then is, instead of specifying that, what you do is you say catch output reject is equal to true. So if it doesn't match any of these criteria, then it will go down here. And I'll just put the same output right here. I'm going to hit apply. Make sure those stuck. And then you can perform specific actions based on if this was a 300 response code, if this was a 400 response code, and so on. Whoops. And I'll see if I can initiate an error to make that happen. And what I can do is I can just purposely butcher the URL, right? And that should be something like 400 is not found or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and run the job, and then we'll see it propagate through there. And all 10 rows should have an error then. Oh, it just failed at the component itself. Okay. Unknown host, invoking this and this and this and this. We don't want it to die in error. So the host itself was bad, so we can't do that. But let's look at our website and see if there's anything we can use that can help us invoke an error. Let's see if we can just do a get on this relative URL, and we'll just put some gibberish in there too to see what happens. we'll do something else here like that. So it doesn't make sense. And that should be like a 404 or something. Yeah, so all 10 rows went to the error log, and they're all 404s. Perfect. So that's how you use the TREST component and how to process the response and any error messages that you would get back. Thank you for watching.